Sam Bradshaw analyzes the football that we see each week. Baylor, their opponent, how they match up, vice versa. Joins us, SicEm365 Radio and 365 Sports. And Sam, it's great to have you on. Yet again, the stuff you do on the site is phenomenal. We appreciate this segment. So, how does the news of Nacua and Romney not being available tomorrow night, according to Pete Thamel and ESPN, affect what Baylor does or Brigham Young does?
Me on, and if it's true, which any pregame injury report I always have a healthy dose of skepticism on. If it's true, it's giant. Last year, Baylor was able to absolutely swarm the BYU run game, and as a result, that left some single coverage for both Nacua and Romney, and they had 8 catches for 249 yards, and that was the vast majority of the BYU offense, other than one long quarterback keeper where either Petrie or Bernard busted an assignment. So it's a massive, massive impact on the game. It impacts how Baylor can call the game against BYU, and how it impacts BYU is it means that guys like Chase Roberts or Keanu Hill have to stand up, have to step up for them. And then it might impact their play calling. I think you'll see a lot more of 2 tight end sets. They've gotten the ball to more fullback tight end Mason Wake at times in the past, but Dallin Holker, who's kind of their number 2 tight end, he is probably the more mobile of their guys. I could see them doing things with him creatively in order to get them in some favorable spots. You know, it's definitely not what BYU wants. It definitely plays into Baylor's hands. But, you know, it comes down to the trenches. They have to find some way to generate a running game against that Baylor front, and they have to do something to help Jaren Hall out. Jaren Hall is an outstanding quarterback who gives you all the upside you could want in terms of foot speed, in terms of arm strength, and he's got great accuracy. He makes good decisions. He protects the ball. But, you know, you got to give him somebody to throw to.
Do they have the horses on defense to slow Baylor down, even though we haven't seen Baylor versus a plus opponent yet in their new skill set?
I'm leaning Baylor on the offensive side. I think Baylor's going to have a good game offensively. But, you know, last year, BYU came in pretty beat up on the defensive line. So just being healthy, even if it's the same guys, that's going to play a big role in Provo. And then when you get into elevation, you know, how's your conditioning for your offensive and defensive lines? Baylor's got more talent there than BYU does, but one of these teams is used to elevation, the other one's not. That could also be a factor. So while Baylor was able to run and stop the run emphatically last year in Waco, between injuries and elevation, BYU probably won't win that matchup, but it might be a lot closer to where other factors might help the game.
Sam, it was Albany, so I'm not expecting, some great scouting report on what you saw X's and O's wise from Baylor, but what did you see, if anything, that stood out to you?
What stood out to me is Chapin made good decisions, and even with the line not really more so the tight ends, but even without ideal protection at times, and Albany had a couple of good transfers who were all conference pass rusher types at lower levels. So, I mean, some solid pass rushers. I mean, stopping the run was probably going to be where their issue was and has been. I like what I saw from Chapin. There were a couple underthrows that would probably be incompletions or picks against Big 12 play, but, the guy that lit up Oklahoma State's outstanding defense and best defense in years in the Big 12 title game, I'm not worried about him beating single coverage once he gets into a rhythm. I liked what I saw defensively for the most part, except for just rush lane integrity, but that'll come as the year goes on. It came last year as the year went on. Aranda and Roberts will get that fixed.
How about Jaren Hall? Last year he was just mauled. He had the long touchdown run, and it was spectacular. And Baylor last year, early Texas State, among others, they struggled sometimes with the mobile guy. Do you feel like that's something that they will be able to contain him a little bit? Is Jaren Hall going to be their biggest threat running the football?
I don't know if he's going to be their biggest threat because they've got a Cal transfer that led Cal in rushing 2 different years and his 230-pound sledgehammer that can really help them in terms of what they're doing on the ground. But Jaren Hall, Not so much on the designed runs, because I think Aranda and Roberts will have a plan for that, but more so just on scramble. I think they're going to be in good shape. Just trying. That's going to be where everything's going to come down to, because they did a poor job against Albany and Pat Poffensbarger. And even going back to last year against Texas State, Brady McBride, and then Chandler Morris. You know, those games where you let the quarterback escape and buy time and make plays, that's where you run into trouble.
Sam, looking at BYU defensively, what is it that stands out to you?
What stands out to me is they're a bend but don't break team. And what that means is you're going to have to be on your game and execute. They're smart defense. They play physical. They do what they can to try and keep you in front of them. They're a lot like an Iowa State in that regard. The alignment's completely different. But the general tactic of, we know we can get big boys. And we know that while we can get the occasional top line corner or safety, for the most part, we're not getting the guys that are going to anchor a 4x100 relay team. So we need to scheme around that. Last year, they kind of copied what the Patriots did to the Rams in the Super Bowl against the Rams wide zone, where they'd have 6 guys up on the line and 1 linebacker behind them. Worked wonderfully for the Patriots, but their D-line just got pushed around in Waco, so it fell apart pretty quickly for BYU, and it left some predictable coverages.
What did you not like, if anything, against Albany?
I didn't like that you gave up some negative plays to some of the aggressive stunts and blitzes that Albany brought. But, you know, keeping it in context, you're talking about a game where the coaches said, all right, let's not get anybody hurt, and let's treat this as a glorified scrimmage so we can put these guys in game situations, see how they react. Because you got a lot of young skill guys, and you got a lot of young guys on the back end of your defense. How are they handling these game situations?
Sam Bradshaw with us, SicEm365 Radio, our college football analyst, one of the handful of them on SicEm365.com.
So, Sam, how do you see this game going? Do you think it'll be a back-and-forth game, or do you think Baylor or BYU controls it, one or the other?
I think if either team controls it, it'll be Baylor, but I do see it as more of a back-and-forth game. I mean, both offenses are just a pain to get off the field. I mean, if you look at their third down conversion opportunities that they convert either on third down or on fourth down, both of them are 50% or better against quality competition. It's just going to be a chore to get either one of them off the field. I think Baylor ultimately takes it, but you're not slowing that offense down too considerably, even with Puka and Romney gone.
Do you think that them out, would that dramatically, if you pick Baylor to win by 3, 7, 2, whatever, would that dramatically change that?
Dramatically, no, because I think Aaron Roderick, their offensive coordinator, Jaron Hall, their quarterback, and their offensive line are all really, really good at what they do. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's not that they don't have other good receivers. They're going to find some ways to scheme guys open. But yeah, you might tack on a score or whatever your expectation was. You know, there's just not too many possessions between two teams that take the air out of the ball the way these do.
Special teams, Hankins, good. Obviously, Powers, very good. You have the punt return by Gavin Holmes. Didn't get a chance to see much on the kick returns. The coverage seemed to be okay. You like their edge there at all?
I liked what I saw from the return game. Obviously, it's Albany, so we'll see how well that maintains throughout. But I like what I've seen from special teams during the entire Aranda era. And don't forget Noah Rauschenberg. Many Baylor fans who can remember that upset against TCU in the early Bryles years, TCU, I think, returned one kickoff for a touchdown and then almost returned another in that game. Rauschenberg gets touchbacks almost every time. That is such just taking the opposing returner out of the game, and it's such a weapon in terms of field position. That is a huge benefit to a defensive team like Baylor. I'm
so glad you brought him up, because that's a terrible oversight for me not to bring him up, because the year before that was a nightmare on, you know, where was it going to go? Just kick it through the end zone, and he does most of the time. And then with altitude, depending on whether there's any wind or not, you think you'd be able to even get an extra oomph on it as well, to just eliminate that from the game.
Absolutely. And you know that if you've got that handled and you've got a really quality punter and quality kicker, it's just another area where it's tough to find a chink in the armor of this Baylor team. And that should pay dividends, not only this weekend, but on into conference play.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate your time. As always, Sam Bradshaw, he puts up stories. He focuses in on the matchups, one offense against the defense and vice versa. The opponent, of course, Baylor. Next week, Texas State. Tomorrow night, a really fantastic and intriguing matchup between Baylor and Brigham Young. Paul, special teams help you.